Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. As we begin with Part 1, Introduction, from the Adepts in the Eastern Esoteric Tradition by Manly Palmer Hall. Part 1, The Light of the Vedas. The Light of the Vedas. This work is a section of a comprehensive survey of the Adept tradition, which will be complete in 15 parts. It is issued in the present form because of the unprecedented rise in the cost of book production. Only in this way can the material be made available to students at a reasonable price. The Light of the Vedas. Introduction. Numerous references occur throughout the religious literature of the world to an order of enlightened human beings, who are the custodians of the essential wisdom of the race. During the medieval revival of the Hermetic tradition in Europe, the higher initiates of this secret fraternity were called Adepts, and it has seemed reasonable and advisable to preserve this term and title. Modern writers have gathered a quantity of reference material dealing with the Adept tradition, but no work is yet available which may be considered as a systematic outline of the historical side of this inquiry. Scattered intimations are not sufficient to justify the Adept concept. The existence of advanced spiritual types already functioning within and through the body of organized human society is taken for granted by the members of many religious groups. Even though the very existence of adept teachers has been artfully concealed, it is not overly difficult to restore the grand theme from available landmarks. Psychologists are inclined to explain the adept concept as an extension and refinement of the folk hero idea originating within human consciousness. What the heroic self is to the individual, the school of the adepts, the heroic race of the Greeks, is to the collective. Convinced that he has unsuspected potentials within himself, and his convictions sustained by the historical panorama of human progress, man finds no difficulty in accepting a doctrine which teaches that some of his own kind have already advanced beyond the limitations imposed by undeveloped faculties and unexplored resources of consciousness. It is impossible to deny that great sages, the founders of religions, and lesser mystics and saints have discovered within themselves extraordinary sources of spiritual insight and courage. To reject inspired leadership is to undermine the noblest convictions of the race. The materialistic effort to explain all mystical revelations as forms of hallucination is undemonstrable and unsatisfactory. The universe bears witness to sovereign intelligence manifesting through the constant unfoldment of living organisms from within themselves and according to immutable laws. The supreme source of consciousness, intelligence, and energy the ancients called God. In attempting to organize the God idea, it was necessary to clothe it in familiar attributes. As time went on, the idea itself was submerged, and deity was regarded as a vast personality subjected to all the limitations imposed by interpretation. From early contemplation was evolved a triune concept of existence consisting of God, the world, and man. God was remote, intangible, and substantially unknowable. The world was the theater of divine manifestation, and man, the noblest production of the evolutionary processes. At a very early time, the human mind found it necessary to populate the qualitative interval between God and man. Familiar examples indicated both the need and the solution. The nation or kingdom was not composed of merely the ruler and his subjects. The head of the state was powerless without a governing body to administer his will and his laws. Antiquity favored the monarchical form of political administration. By virtue of his internal resources, man was entitled to be governed constitutionally. It was the privilege of the human being to have a voice in the management of his own affairs, but he also required leadership in those larger issues which were beyond his personal experience. It thus came about that religious and philosophical systems envisioned deity as operating through orders of tutelary divinities, themselves conditioned aspects of the ultimate sovereignty. The interval between God and man was then filled by descending orders or hierarchies of intelligences, such as were described by St. Paul as the thrones, dominions, and principalities. At the same time, humanity accepted the challenge of this interval and sought to ascend through disciplines of spiritual development toward conscious knowledge of the hierarchy. When capitalized, hierarchy represents the adept government of the world. The only means available for such an ascent were the apperceptive powers locked within the human compound. The mystery systems of initiation were organized to teach the science of human regeneration, by which the inner faculties of the soul could be stimulated and unfolded according to the laws governing such processes in nature. These sacred institutions flourished collectively for thousands of years, and those who attained mastery were called initiates. These were not merely persons who had received an exalted kind of knowledge. Their advancement was the result of the release of internal powers of God-knowing. Through these initiate teachers, the existence of the adept tradition was gradually revealed to the world. The whole doctrine is suspended from one primary assumption, namely that it is possible for the creature to know the Creator. It was further held that unless such a possibility existed, the human state was purposeless. The adepts are sometimes referred to as a race inhabiting a continent between heaven and earth. This does not mean that the secret fraternity is a separate creation, but a foreshadowing of the human destiny. Ultimately, the working of natural law will release the extrasensory perceptions in the majority of mankind. The initiate teachers are therefore referred to as elder brothers, who have achieved to a superior state because of dedication to the noblest ideals which can inspire mortal conduct. Increase of knowledge brings skill, which the word adept implies. The miraculous accounts, which are an essential part of the adept tradition, bear witness to increase of internal wisdom. The adept is not a magician, but a sage. He does not dominate natural law or violate its patterns. He simply uses the resources of nature which his inner consciousness has made available. As the adept tradition descended to the modern world through the migrations of the Aryan peoples, it is fitting that the first section of the present work should begin with the religious mysteries of Hinduism. The degree of indebtedness to the Eastern wisdom will be more apparent as the story unfolds. There are unfamiliar names and strange terms, but these are defined as used and should not discourage the reader. The rishis of old Aryavata were the first Aryan adepts, and from them came the wonderful doctrines and teachings which the East honors today as the light of the Vedas. Manly Palmer Hall, May 1952, Los Angeles, California. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.